This is I Have No Title and I Must Podcast, the show where we discuss whatever aspect of pop culture is on our mind. Star Wars month was really fun for us. I hope everyone else enjoyed it. If you've not watched it, go see it. But before we close out Star Wars completely, I would like to add an addendum to the last episode. When I was talking about the Darth Bane books, I said one of them was self-titled. I was incorrect, and I shouldn't have been because we were just talking about it because it's the rule of two, not self-titled, and I even own the book.
Nobody's perfect.
But either way, if you've not seen them, check out the last episode. And if you've not read the books, I check them out. They're pretty good. But, this might be late for everybody else, but recent for us because we were busy with Star Wars month. But recently we just went and watched Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and I'd say I really enjoyed it. I don't know what everyone else is saying about it. I've not read a lot of the reviews yet. Been trying to avoid any kind of spoilers for it before I've seen it myself. But yeah, what'd you think, Chris?
I think the reviews have generally been kind. It's just fewer people are going to see it. It's actually got some really great reviews as far as I know. And even people are saying it's got excellent depictions of... negative depictions of animal cruelty, but which is good because it's presented in a negative way to show how the neglect and mistreatment of animals, especially for scientific purposes, can be a bad thing. So I really enjoyed the movie. It focuses heavily on Rocket in a weird way because he's kind of not in it as much as you'd think, but is somehow still the central character in the story.
The
is
driving
based.
force behind it.
So he's always been my favorite character among them. So that was cool for me, and it's super weird. Also cool for me.
But yeah, just like with the other Guardians, soundtrack was great. The humor was great. The heartfelt moments were there, and it has an excellent hallway fight scene, which I'm a sucker for, but still pretty good.
CG generated oneer, there's no telling how many cuts are actually in there, but you can't catch them.
No, but I was actually watching an interview with James Gunn after that, where they asked him what his top 5 favorite comic book movies are, and somewhere in there he had mentioned Old Boy, which has an excellent hallway fight scene of its own, and he said that was definitely a direct influence.
Yeah.
And you can tell.
And what was his number 1 comic book movie of all time? Did you finish the video?
I did, but I do not remember.
Are you spacing on it? It's right there.
Oh, yeah, Into the Spider-Verse, yeah.
Into the Spider-Verse. He said, and one of the things he said is there's no plot holes that a lot of multiverse movies run into. Spoiler, we're probably going to be talking about Spider-Verse next time.
But where do you think Guardians is going with Gunn heading over to DC?
I'm really hoping that James can come back. I hope they have a more reciprocal relationship with him already going and doing Peacemaker.
Yeah, he did the Suicide Squad and then Peacemaker.
He did the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker, and then still finished up Guardians. So I don't see any reason why there can't be a more reciprocal relationship between these two, companies. Marvel is always, certain Marvel fans or people who've worked for Marvel refer to DC as their distinguished competition, being polite. I think and there's so many writers, Jim Lee,
Jack Kirby.
Jim Lee, I specifically mentioned because just last week, I think he became the president of DC Comics. Jim Lee, for people who don't know, is the artist of the number 1 selling comic book of all time, X-Men #1, that was released in 1991. You probably have a t-shirt that has that on it, or just the issues somewhere buried in your collection because there were millions of copies of it. It's not worth anything because there was the comic book boom of the 90s. They released, I think, 5 variant covers and then one that was like a fold out, like a quad fold or something with Magneto, Cyclops, Wolverine, and I want to say Beast. Maybe now Beast was further on. That doesn't matter. Anyway, they go back and forth all the time. Kirby was another one. He completed stories, and you can do your research on it, but the New Gods story kind of eclipses in a weird way, not 100%, but headcanon. It does eclipse both companies.
Yeah.
So I think he could come back. And we're not talking about in 3 weeks, he's got a lot of work to do. Probably gonna just take the reins on the next Superman film and inject some levity into I feel deeply needed in the DC universe, more than what Ezra Miller could provide by saying all of his quippy quips.
Yeah, and I kind of hope they scrap the Ezra Miller Flash, because even without his controversies, like outside of the film, it just never made a good Flash to me.
Yeah, I didn't see that movie.
I didn't either.
And here's my thing. People are going to say, in the end, years from now, like, the same as they do about the Weekly Planet. Like, those guys are just Marvel fanboys or whatever. You're wearing a Flash shirt right now.
Yes, that's why I'm probably criticizing it harder.
Yeah.
Because Flash is one of my favorite DC characters.
Is he?
Yes.
I did read some in the 90s, and I love the Flashpoint Paradox. I think that's a great depiction of the character. I loved him in the Justice League cartoon, Justice League Unlimited.
Yeah.
I think they made excellent use out of him. Whatever, and the different iterations of him, that the character has evolved from, I want to say Jay Garrick.
Yeah.
Is that...
He was the Golden Age Flash.
Okay. For some reason, I thought that was the Spectre's name, and I got worried for a second. No. Now I can't remember the Spectre's name. And nobody say Hal Jordan. But that was, he's their comedy relief, and you have to have... It's got to be a fine line. I think he just kind of went overboard. From what I saw, again, I haven't seen the whole movie. I do intend to watch that, since I think James Gunn, being the genius writer that he is going to take what was here and collapse it down and then merge a few other things into maybe a new universe.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what I think Marvel's going to be doing with the Secret Wars storyline. So they're going to be doing soft reboots all around for both companies at the same time, it looks like, hopefully with good results.
But yeah, I'm still really curious to see what he does with the Superman movie, because I'll admit, I don't really care for the Superman character.
Like, ever?
No. It's just every now and then there's like a hint of a storyline that I'm like, I wish you guys would lean into that a little bit more. Because I feel Young Justice did this with the Superboy arcs, where it's like Superboy's kind of like doesn't have any kind of direction. Like where he was like a genetic clone. And so obviously Superman was the choice to be the father figure, but he totally kind of bailed on it. And so there's that tension between everybody being like, hey, why aren't you taking responsibility? And he's like, well, I didn't make this, so why is it my responsibility? Kind of back and forth. I think that was the most interesting Superman was to me.
Yeah.
But it's just not fully explored.
I really got into Superman comics when he died, which... he wasn't in after that for a while. And there were 4 Supermen who came in and took his place. This is the mid-90s. It was like, you would think that would be the highest selling comic book of all time, but no, still that X-Men. So that was an interesting story to me. Superboy ended up being a clone, and they were open with that at the very beginning. One guy had like kind of an Iron Man outfit.
Steel?
Yeah, Steel, which somehow has its own movie. It was a John Henry, I believe his name was. That was not bad. And they were open with that at the very beginning. Both characters knew they are not the real Superman. And then there were 2 characters that came right out and said, I am the real Superman. And that was a relentless slog, because at the time, Superman had 4 titles, and they came out like monthly, each of those titles. So that was 4 comic books a month, because they came out, one of them that came out that month would start on the first week of the month, and so on. So it was like all the time, which was kind of cool. I mean, that would be stressful for me now, because I've got too much to do. But at the time, some of it even was like in the late summer going into the fall. It was like a trip to the comic book store once a week to not look around, but get something specifically that I'm going to read like on the way home or as soon as I get home. So that was exciting. And then they trailed off. Superman came back, and I feel modern writers have struggled with a character that's too powerful to write good stories for, and especially in the modern movies.
I feel like the modern movies, they just keep rehashing the same storylines. It's like, because Superman does have some good villains if they would use them. Like Lobo, yet to see him in a movie yet.
Yeah.
He would be a great one, because he could actually rival Superman and maybe even get a spin-off movie of his own.
Yeah, I really don't want to discuss Lex Luthor right now. James, get on that. Fix that. Yeah, I think they definitely need a complete reboot of that. And I mean, on some level, whenever James Gunn has his fingerprints on a movie, I mean, I didn't realize I liked this guy as much as I did until I started doing some research on it. And I was like, how has he not done more stuff?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I have not watched Peacemaker. I might check that out.
Oh, definitely. It's just turn your brain off, go watch it. It's just a fun ride. Like, don't expect anything serious. Just go and enjoy it.
So I think he's going to. I think he could come back for Marvel for a guest spot, and he was too valuable to them for them to not sweeten that deal. And he's already gone back and forth. I think whoever made the decision initially to fire him when they did that weren't the people he was close with. Otherwise, he would have just said, you, I'm not coming back because you guys wronged me. He said, hey, watch this, opened the door, and everyone was happy to see him. And he was happy to come back and finish his job, which was to complete the trilogy. Maybe that's all he ever intended to do. And he's not going to talk about that publicly. He's not going to say, like, I'm never coming back or I'm definitely coming back. You can't make those sorts of promises. And people these days play things very close to that's almost like giving up. Yeah, Thanos dies and he, at the end of the movie, can't reveal those sorts of things. So what are you hoping he does with this DCEU or whatever they're going to end up calling it?
What I hope is for him to just do his thing and for the studio to stay out of it, because James Gunn is just as big of a comic book fan as the people going to see his movies. Like, he puts in the research, he reads them, he enjoys them. He's going to do right by the source material, even if he's going to change it for his own needs.
Yeah, I think he's always been not just respectful to the source. You can be respectful to the source material and still throw it out the window and do whatever you want. Essentially, he knows, he has this intuitive seventh sense where he can take these elements and know what is 100% necessary to maintain the spirit of something and the aesthetic and what to change to make it work even better for a live action medium. That's all I can say. Like, certain people get that. I think one misstep of Marvel is that all of the costuming is starting to look the same. Like when Star Fox came in and he looks, it's like, that's just a Thor or Captain America or Captain Marvel or any other like completely like disparate superhero from this universe, that they all have these rubber leather looking suits that are just different colors. Whereas then the Guardians come in and most of the time they wear just clothes. But then when they suit up, they have what looks like a uniform that's made out of, I don't know what kind of material, like it looks like waterproof. It almost looks like a fireman, like thick canvas or something.
Yeah.
They don't show it like up close, but I have to imagine it's very rigid material that would be tough, but it doesn't look like anything else. They don't look like superheroes. They look like they're suiting up to do a job, like Ghostbusters.
I think that's one of the things I liked about Peacemaker. It's like, that was just a ridiculous costume, and they let it be a ridiculous costume.
Yeah, they didn't even try to update it, change. They just replicated it as closely as they could from the comic, right?
Yeah.
Just like put it on the screen. Here we are. It's John. We already have John Cena. That's the most ridiculous thing we could do in the first place.
Yeah. But
no shade against wrestlers. And for having said that, I just want to say Batista is like, I know people might have strong opinions, especially our core demographic base. We might even have more wrestling fans. The reason I can talk about this, just like you said, I used to watch wrestling as often as I could. I owned VHS, okay? And I would record them sometimes. I was a hardcore fan. I've eventually drifted away into my adulthood, so just know that I'm not saying this lightly. I critique harsh, but it's because I love things. Dave Bautista is the greatest wrestler, former wrestler, turned actor. And I mean the actor part, not the wrestler part, although he was a good wrestler too.
That's because he actually wants to be a good actor. He doesn't...
He's not just doing it for a paycheck.
Because like The Rock, nothing bad against him, but you know what you're going to get when he goes in. He's not an actor. He's a movie star.
He's doing The Rock.
Yeah.
That character that he cultivated, there's some aspect of that in every role that he does. When Dave Bautista, when I see him in Blade Runner, he's playing a part. I believe that he is this guy that's just trying to hide. He's a robot that's just looking to get away, and he wants to live a quiet life. When I see Drax, he has thrown himself in there. That doesn't seem like anything like himself in real life, and it is so believable, and he is nonstop with it, and it's not only heartwarming, but hilarious at the same time. I love him for that. Everything that I've seen him in, he's completely different from the last thing, because I think he's one of the most up-and-coming character actors. It sucks that he had to start his acting career later in life.
Yeah.
So he can't be as diverse as a younger person might be. He's also gigantic, so that kind of limits some of the roles he might have potentially.
Yeah, I know he was talking that it limits him because everyone compares him to The Rock. He's like, I don't want to be the next Rock. He's like, I just want to be an actor.
Yeah, it
shows, I think.
They should be comparing him to I don't know. Johnny Depp comes to mind. Somebody who disappears into a role and plays does research or thinks up, well, what's this character gonna be this time? Okay, a drunken pirate who's always kind of staggering even when he's stone sober. That's what he's gonna be. He's gonna be like a slurry, Britishy kind of guy. Then what's this version of Willy Wonka gonna be? Well, we're doing it, so there's no getting out of it. And Gene Wilder did it to perfection as Gene Wilder, so I have to do something super different. So I'm just gonna play it as like a stunted weirdo. Perfect. Anyway, those were two terrible examples, but Dave Bautista is a character actor. I think that has to be the description that you would tag on him, because that's what he's doing. The Rock is just a movie star.
The Rock.
Yeah. That's all he's doing. I mean, maybe Roddy Piper did some decent acting in segments somewhere. Is Roddy Piper still alive?
No, he passed away a few years ago.
Man, it's like you could mention randomly any 5 wrestlers and they'll probably be dead unless they're currently on TV right now. And even then, the percentage goes up. It startles me. But anyway, there's so many wrestlers that have tried to make that jump to acting, because what else are you going to do?
Yeah.
Yes, when you've wrecked your body and you're famous. Unless you specifically were already going to maybe go into music before then and just had a secondary love of wrestling and fell into it. I guess it's gonna be acting, because it's what everybody's go-to thing is if you're famous and you can have connections.
I mean, let's be honest, as a wrestler, you're kind of doing that already.
Yeah, I mean, essentially you are. They're playing characters. A lot of them, at least. So, yeah.
One thing that I do hope James Gunn comes back to Marvel for, and I think we've talked about this off the mic, but I don't know if we've talked about it
on the mic.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, on the show. But I want to see James Gunn do a Howard the Duck movie.
I think that's in the cards. I think that's a possibility. I think it would be best as one of those Marvel special presentations that they do a 1-hour thing on Disney Plus.
Because I know a lot of people hated it, but I've watched the hell out of the 1980s Howard the Duck movie.
It's in your collection, right?
It is, yeah. I own a physical copy of it, and I've watched it so many times. But Howard the Duck has made cameos in James Gunn's Guardians movies already. I just want to see him moved into the spotlight with someone that's going to respect the character and give us some good material out of it.
I hope for your sake that does happen. I am indifferent. But I like to see him make those cameos. Because it's so weird that that character exists at all.
Yeah.
So,
but James Gunn does a good job of taking these weird characters and doing something great with them anyway. Because if anyone's read the original Guardians of the Galaxy comic books,
oh, that's weird.
Yeah, they're a slog to get through because they're just kind of boring. None of the characters really stand out. So if you've not read them, go ahead and pass. If you were thinking about the Guardians history, go ahead and jump into one of the more modern ones. You'll have a much more enjoyable time. But I ended up with a conversation with a guy at the library talking about Guardians. So I picked up the originals. It's not worth it.
So you were asking, so I refuse to answer what will happen to these Guardians characters without James Gunn, because I'm hoping that he will return. But a lot of the actors aren't coming back, and the ones that are probably still here are, kind of scattered about. So there is, we would get into spoiler territory. So we'll stay non-specific with that, because I think if you haven't seen this movie now, you have an idea. Everyone had an idea about what was going to happen in this, which I will neither confirm nor deny. And what I've already said neither confirms nor denies any of that. All I'm going to tell you to do is, if you haven't watched it and somehow you're still listening to this conversation, go see this movie, because it's actually really good. I think that Star-Lord might end up in an Avengers movie. I think all of them will end up in the, Secret Wars, because they're too hot IP to not have them in there, especially right now. Mantis is super powerful. Like, I think she is completely underrated as to how powerful she is. So I don't know what they're going to do with her. Some people have speculated she's going to be the key to a lot of what's going on in the Marvel Universe moving forward. I don't know if she's going to be that important, but she can definitely stand on her own. I'm not suggesting they do a Mantis movie or TV show, but I definitely want to see what they do with that character. She quickly became one of my favorites, and I just want to see more. I want to see a Guardians movie with Cosmo all the way through.
Yes.
Did we look up, was that the voice of BMO?
I was going to ask you this, and I completely blanked on it.
I forgot. But while I was in the movie, I was like, that's got to be BMO, right?
I thought that too, but I don't think it is.
That's sad.
Yeah.
If that's not the case, then that person was channeling BMO then.
Yeah, because I was thinking it for the whole movie, but I don't think it is.
It wasn't distracting either. I thought, this is actually awesome.
Not to take away anything from the voice actor that did do it, but I think it would have been really cool if it was the voice of BMO.
Yes. So I think there's, a lot of these characters still have a bright future, and some of the people that have said they'll never come back, and I'm not saying it's for money, I'm just saying sometimes they need a break.
Yeah.
And to not have that 3 hours of prosthetics hanging over their head knowing when they're going into this movie. So after having a break and doing some other things, maybe eventually some of them can come back for a cameo. They especially for Drax, it was waist up.
Yeah.
His entire torso, arms, and head. So to add in to make sure in this one he had a shirt on it, even though it was a sleeveless shirt, to cut down on the amount of prosthetics and makeup they had to apply, that had to be big. But even still,
Yeah. I don't remember who was being interviewed by, but I know Dave Bautista had talked about the reason he wanted out of it is not so much the prosthetics, although I know that probably wasn't fun, was just the physicality of it. He's like, they always want him to be shirtless, but he's getting older, and it's just getting harder to keep up that kind of physique, and he's kind of tired of spending most of his time in the gym.
I mean, I can see that.
Yeah.
And it in the face you can see it a little bit, but I don't think he has to be totally ripped, I mean, he's gigantic anyway.
Yeah.
How tall is he?
6'4", maybe.
Yeah, he looks
maybe taller.
And with as broad as he is, he's just so imposing. So I could see that every bit of it. And for personal reasons, if you just didn't want to be in the Marvel machine anymore, I could understand that too. Get out for a while, and then maybe later on you change your mind.
Yeah.
They'll give you a call, or you're like, hey, you want this character to come back? And they might do it. Same for Karen Gillan. I think she shaved her head one time, and I don't think she had to do that.
No, she just did.
Which maybe she just wanted to change of pace. I think these characters are still in decent hands. Now, if they could get the Russo brothers back, I think things might go a little smoother over at Marvel. If they could get James Gunn back,
Yeah.
a lot more so.
Yeah, he will be missed at Marvel, but DC needs somebody in charge that knows what they're doing.
They do. They have needed a point person for a long time. And whoever the multiple people, I think for a while, just by default, it was Zack Snyder. And I get it. I do, DC kind of, they've had dark phases. Both companies have had dark phases and light phases, Iron Man's alcoholism storyline, and the one where who was it? Speedy, I think, had a drug problem or something.
Yeah.
Is that right? So Speedy being the Green Arrow's
sidekick.
Yeah. So given that, when you think of Superman, you don't think of dark and edgy. You know, that's the poster child of DC. So when Zack Snyder took over, you know, and Marvel's doing like a lot of lighthearted stuff, and some of their movies you could even just categorize as like action comedies. Like comedy is like in the forefront, not just some good humor added in. It almost became what they were marketing. So for DC to go the complete opposite direction with dark and dreary, I get what they were trying to do, but not all of it was working. And some of the people at DC, like prior to that, when they were just, let's see what sticks, and we'll do a Jonah Hex movie. How about that? We'll do a Jonah Hex movie. People won't see that coming. Or then, like, we'll start our franchise out with a Green Lantern. I just don't see it. Like, I don't see these. There was no cohesive thought process behind these marketing decisions. And you do have to have that, especially when starting a huge franchise. You have to have it planned out with some room for wiggles to take things in and out, like what they generally have done at Marvel. I mean, that Inhumans movie never got made. We got an awful TV show that everyone would like to forget about. And then we can argue over what's canon and what's not canon. But DC definitely needed James Gunn, or somebody like him. He's actually their best case scenario, I think. Somebody who's tested, worked for a company that was already doing this, was a consultant through it all, and it worked. For the most part. I mean, through the Infinity War saga and to Endgame, not going to say it was perfect, but like the amount of movies you would throw out versus the amount of movies you would keep, it far outweighs that, you know. The keep ones, not the throw out.
I always felt that DC was trying to capitalize on what Marvel was doing without laying the groundwork.
Yes.
Who are these characters? It's like you're starting with the Avengers instead of building up. And it's just like there's no direction because, you know, as far as like plot holes go, like actual plot holes, not what people think are plot holes, like the Wonder Woman movies. The first one's pretty good, but the second one, like it couldn't even follow its own logic and contradicts things that happen in the Justice League movie because Wonder Woman couldn't fly. But now she can, even though the one's in the past and one's set in the future.
Yeah, well, you know, people change over time. I used to not like guacamole, and now I can't get enough of it. So, you know, there's that. Where's somebody gonna do? Come along and say, like, this doesn't fit your character, Chris. You're eating guacamole? At one point, you didn't even like it. In fact, you said it was gross. Quote, well, I did. And then one day I was going through a really rough patch and I don't know why, but I decided to try some and it was really good. And they came and made it at the table and they seemed really annoyed that I'd ordered it because they had to make it in person at the table. And I was like, look, I did not talk you into working here. All right. I didn't know that was what was going to happen. I knew that was what was going to happen. I actually wanted to see how they made it.
My thing with the Wonder Woman, though, is I feel it's backwards. It's like, hey, I like guacamole, but I've decided I'm not going to eat guacamole. But now we're in a situation where me eating guacamole would really be beneficial, and I'm just not going to eat guacamole. It's like, because if you're fighting, I've gone blank. Who's the bad guy?
Pedro Pascal?
No, in
Superman?
They done Pedro wrong in that movie. That's another topic. In Justice League, I've gone blank.
Is it not Darkseid? Is it the other guy that looks like a silver razor bladey looking guy? Is it Steppenwolf?
No.
It's not? Okay, so while he looks it up, I'm going to muse about why we're still on Wonder Woman. We're supposed to be talking about James Gunn. All right, and we're back.
Okay, I apologize. You were right. Steppenwolf is the bad guy in
Justice League. Thank you.
I was talking about the wrong movie completely.
So, were you thinking of Pedro?
No, I was thinking of Doomsday in Batman vs. Superman.
Oh, I forgot about that.
But, yeah, if you eating guacamole would help you beat Doomsday, you would eat guacamole, even if you didn't feel like it.
Yeah, probably.
So if you could fly and you're fighting something that's going to take every superhero to beat, I think that's something to pull out of your pocket.
Well, like before my girlfriend met me, she never really had hummus. And when we started hanging out a lot, I would order hummus and she would eat on it and be like, this is actually really good. Why have I never tried this? And went through a phase where she ate a lot of hummus. And then one day I ordered some hummus and she didn't eat on it. And I was like, you don't want any hummus? And she's like, nah, I'm not feeling it today. And then she just stopped. She didn't eat hummus ever again to this day and says like, it's like, I like it. I just don't want it anymore. Maybe that's what happened with Wonder Woman. It's like, she can fly, but, that's for other people.
It's like Superman's already flying. I won't step on his toes.
Batman's got a grappling hook. He's got that whatever kind of jet thing he's got. And he's literally called Batman, named after an animal who can fly. Let's just kind of shove it in her face, and she's like, I don't want to show off. This is... you guys both have moms that have the same name. I feel left out, so I'm not flying.
Anyway, I digress.
I think this is our best podcast yet. What was our topic? I've forgotten again.
James Gunn, he has other movies besides Marvel and DC.
He does. Okay, so, Super, if you haven't seen Super, I'm not sure where it's playing.
When I seen it, it was on Netflix, but that was also about 6 or 7 years ago.
So it might be on there now. If it is, find it and watch it, but be prepared. It's not a family movie. Unless your family's, really up, then go to town on it. It's super dark, but it feels like it's not because it's all set in the daytime and it's bright colors. And it seems like if Wes Anderson made a movie before Bottle Rocket, you're watching that initially. It's just the indiest of indie films that just with completely normal people that are doing subtle bad acting. And then it just jumps into this unstable guy's life.
For anyone who's not seen it, it's Rainn Wilson. His wife becomes a drug addict. And so he blames the guy that got her hooked on drugs. And so he dons this costume and becomes
the Crimson Bolt. Shut up, crime!
And he just pretty much goes around beating up people with a monkey wrench.
Yes.
And it gets dark.
Yeah.
But it's a pretty decent movie. So without spoiling any more, go watch it.
Yes, go watch it. It's and it could be there could be a sequel to that movie. They snuck in Brightburn, in recent memory, and a lot of you probably saw it. I don't know. I didn't actually end up seeing it because I'm not a big horror movie buff for modern horror. I still like old silent films, Golem and The Man Who Laughs and anything with Vincent Price, but I haven't liked a lot of modern horror fare, so I haven't been to see a lot of those, but I have heard a lot of reviews. Brightburn got a lot of mixed reviews.
Yeah.
I heard really good things from some people and really bad things. It worked for some people and didn't for others. Having said that, there is a scene at the end that implies the Crimson Bolt might be in that same universe. So if they continued that on, we might see the return of that character.
Or it could just be a nice little cameo because the movie was written by James Gunn's brothers. I think about two of them wrote it.
Yeah.
But what actually surprised me is I didn't realize James Gunn wrote the 2 live-action Scooby-Doo movies until recently.
Yeah, I thought that he, when I heard about that, I thought he wrote and directed them, but he only wrote them. How did you feel about those movies?
I actually like those movies. Matthew Lillard as Shaggy, that is the perfect casting.
That is perfect casting. He's a really nice guy, too. I met him once, and he's really nice. You know that thing he does in movies where he seems like he might be the dumbest person in the room, but he's still just adorable?
Yeah.
That's not acting. Anyway.
But no, I did like the live-action Scooby-Doo movies. You can call me a simple man if you want, but I see a fart joke, I laugh at a fart joke. And the first Scooby-Doo had one of the best fart jokes of all time. And I will stand by that.
All right. I will walk away from it. So I want to touch briefly on his choice of soundtracks. The second movie, we were still dealing with a certain era in Guardians 1. It was meant to be... think like 60s, 70s, 80s, and there's a cutoff point for which his mom would have made those mixtapes. So he'd been holding on to that second mixtape, which still, I think the cutoff would have been 86, 87, something like that. So I think the first soundtrack was amazing. Like, perfect. The second one, for Guardians 2, fell down a little bit for me. I still think it's good, but just not great. And then the one scene for Infinity War, they let him throw in a song, the Rubber Band Man. I love that song. And it's, for some reason, it's 7 minutes long. And when I put it on, I listened to the whole thing. I'm fine with that. Allison said, my girlfriend, it could be 4 minutes. I disagree. And I will play it to its end every time. So in the end of the second movie, he gets a Zune. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's like a precursor to an iPod. So I can't remember how many songs they said I had on it, like 3,000 or something. So that freed up, James to like widen his. I think that the most recent song he had was from Florence and the Machine, I think. There were some other ones that were, more modern too, but I think that was the most recent. And every song fit its scene perfectly. I think this one, I was really excited to see what he would do with like the range that he would have, unlimited choices with music. And it fit in perfectly. And I think even better the way he incorporated it in to make the music diegetic at times where we can hear it kind of through speakers and not just like as an audience, like, because Peter's really listening to these songs, and so there'll be times that he presses a button and the music stops, or they press a button and it's playing all over the town's speakers that they live in, so everyone's just having a dance party, which sounds dumb, but is actually really fun in the movie.
Yeah, going back to that hallway fight scene, the Beastie Boys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got hyped for that.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know that would have been my first choice if I was making it, but after seeing it, yeah, that was the perfect choice. And I got hyped all the way through. It was fantastic.
Yeah, if I was going to stay with Beastie Boys, like, I think people may have automatically gone to, like, Sabotage, but that might have been a little too hard. I maybe would have gone with Run DMC, but that's just me. I still love the Beastie Boys. That moment where he puts that on and it goes into it was pretty sweet.
Yeah. I feel like Fry a lot of times when it comes to Beastie Boys. I don't know why I like the Beastie Boys as much as I do, but I never turn that if it comes on the radio.
No. I mean, there's something you can't quite put your finger on. Like, the same, I just mentioned Run DMC. It's the same with me. It's like, I feel so nostalgic when I hear, like, classic 80s rap. For me, that's just, like, one of my first loves of music before I really got into music, and I just had a passing appreciation for music. A lot of the people around me were listening to, basically, like, pop rap at the time. It was, a lot of MC Hammer, a lot of Vanilla Ice, but Run DMC seemed real.
Yeah.
And they were really... And they were a group like the Beastie Boys, like finish each other's sentences and they work out a song. It's meticulous and it's not easy. So I didn't plan to work Run DMC into this episode, but I did.
I don't think we planned to work most things into an episode, but here they are.
What are you talking about? I have a script right here in front of me. I've been reading from it the whole time.
Would you like to tell everyone what my script is?
No.
Don't want to ruin the magic.
You're right.
But there isn't one. A script. There might be magic. I don't know. That's for you to decide.
So, what haven't we talked about? I mean, we're absolutely, I feel like, not going to talk about James Gunn's controversy, finger quotes, because,
All right.
just like with Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes you do things when you're young, and then you decide later, I don't want to do that anymore. But Tyler here, I guess, probably would judge somebody based on something they did young. You're like, oh, Wonder Woman used to fly, and now she doesn't feel like doing it anymore. So, anyway, I really don't have anything to say about it.
My only thing was, I don't even remember what the controversy was. I just remember thinking, you're firing him over that?
Yeah, it was jokes.
So I said, I'm like, it's like they were clearly jokes. Maybe distasteful, but clearly jokes, and made, with a different mindset. You change, you move on.
Did you say just tasteful or distasteful?
I meant to say distasteful. Not sure what I said now.
I'll gaslight you into thinking you said they were just tasteful.
Yeah, just tasteful jokes. No, they were probably distasteful, but
Well, okay. The one thing I will say about this, this is the culture we're living in now, and I'm a pretty liberal guy, but there's a problem when somebody who made a joke about I don't care how extreme the joke is. If you were like, Hitler was right about him vegan, whatever the joke is, no matter how extreme, bleep all that. People can make up their own distasteful joke. He got fired for jokes he made 10 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, something along those lines at the time. Actually, I think it was about 10 years about the time when he was getting the old heave-ho. Whereas Ezra Miller can commit every crime known to man, and they're just kind of whispering about it in hushed tones. Will he get fired? Yes. But it's like there's not the uproar and upheaval there was about James Gunn, who like, oh, he made jokes? I can't believe this.
that's what I never understood. It's like, clearly jokes. Yes, distasteful, but even he would admit that.
Yeah,
Ezra Miller
think they're tasteful too.
Doesn't seem remorseful. He continues to do this.
Yeah. He kidnapped a 15-year-old girl.
Like multiple assault cases back to back, not like years apart.
And on camera.
Yeah.
Anytime somebody sees if you see Ezra Miller, PSA, get your phone out and start filming it. Because whether you're going to get assaulted or see something cool, there's going to be something to tell a story about later. He does not disappoint.
And yet Johnny Depp's the one fired from the Harry Potter movies.
Well, they're probably going to call it a day on that.
Still, though, I never understood that. Ezra Miller still has his job as the Flash. He's still
apparently
in, the Fantastic Beasts movies. But anyway.
Nobody's listening at this point. We're in the after show. What is essentially the after show at this point? It's just you, me, Becky, Allison, and your friend Josh?
Yeah.
Josh. Hey, Josh. Thanks for all your comments, likes, supports, subscorps, whatever, shares. We really appreciate you. And Becky and Sam. Sam, if you don't start listening to this show, there's something... All right. I'm sorry. I apologize. But not to Sam, the rest of you. Sam, I got my eye on you. All right. So Ezra Miller is somehow wearing some sort of plot armor for... And I don't know why it is. Or what could be the reason that he's got some blackmail currency on somebody in somewhere. It's not even the executives or whatever starting. What's the point of firing or hiring somebody who's in prison? He's not, he gave that underage girl drugs and they found her covered in bruises and incoherent. And then he was just peace out. And then they just couldn't find him because he's hopping around the globe, jet setting. I was just watching, by chance, I clicked on a video that said, we need to talk about Ezra Miller. And instead of talking about him, the guy just was giving the rundown in meticulous detail about all the stuff he's done. I got about halfway through before I had to stop because I was like, it doesn't end. I don't know what he's doing now, but be careful. And Ezra, if you're listening, I got my eye on you too. Not as much as Sam, but still, watch it. And, do some better acting. Come on. You can do better than that. Branch out.
At this point, I just feel like with DC, it's just hey, they're still talking about us. Let's leave him in a little bit longer.
Plus, it was their gateway movie. I think they were always planning to make a big jump, to do a Flashpoint Paradox movie and then leap into a new universe where they could let some of the actors who wanted out to go, because Ben Affleck either just wanted to go back to just directing or doing regular movies or at least not being Batman. So he came back for this one. I think that's cool. I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing people in a multiverse movie from bad movies kind of redeem themselves a little bit. Anson Mount, who is a great actor, but was done a disservice by how bad the Inhumans ended up being, got to come back and reprise his role as Black Bolt. Blackagar Boltagon. I'd like to see in the, when they introduce the Fantastic Four, and there's going to be a Council of Reeds I don't know if it's going to be in the Secret Wars movie or in Fantastic Four if they'll build to it. I'd love to see Ione Grufford and the kid that was in Whiplash and the other movie that we don't talk about as, Reed Richards again. I think that would actually be really cool. Especially, I think Ione Grufford maybe should have been also in the Doctor Strange movie. I never disliked him. Of my critiques in those films, heroes. He's not one of them.
Yeah.
So I just want to mention James Gunn again to remind everybody we're kind of still talking about James Gunn.
Well, if we're going to do an ending note with James Gunn, my hope for the future is that he keeps Robert Pattinson as Batman.
Do you think that's the? I don't think so. Well, I mean, so I think that's going to be its own line.
separate.
Yeah, it's going to be its own line of movies that they'll do. And if they do another multiverse movie, I think it'd be cool if he had a cameo in this Flashpoint movie. I don't know how that would be if they did like a real. What's one of their big crossover events? What do they always call it? Final Crisis, like a crisis movie. That was if they put that on the table, that would be like Infinity War level, like hype.
Yeah.
And I think they should build him up and bring him in. I think they'll allow those to continue on just because of how good it was. Yeah. And Robert Pattinson was good as it. He's only getting to be a better actor. So as he learns that any of the critiques about how weird he is in that's just him being a weird Bruce Wayne that, you know, wears makeup on his face to like conceal his identity and look more like a bat. His costume is maybe the best we've seen since Tim Burton. I think it's the best Batman outfit. And his, you know, the way he is in like slow moments when he's just kind of slumped over. He's always wearing sunglasses because he's not used to being out in the daytime. It's the most real, I think, most realistic depiction that we've seen of Bruce Wayne in a very long time, maybe ever. I think James needs to. I don't know. Other than that, it would be cool if they rolled him in, but I don't think so. I still think they need to lean into the dark because it's not going to do well if we have just two Marvel universes with different characters. There can still be some room to go on a darker edge. Just have Superman be Superman and the Flash be the Flash, and then if you bring in like say Hal Jordan or one of the other Green Lanterns, let them do his alcohol story.
Yeah.
He was arrested for drunk driving and he had an alcohol problem.
It's like, you know, let's get weird with it. Let's bring Mixtic Pedelec in here.
Yes, let's do that. And for they could do if they did Green Arrow on the big screen, they could do Speedy's drug problem.
Yeah.
I would. Oh, you know, okay. So, James, if someone is listening to this and you have the ear of James Gunn, because I know he probably wouldn't necessarily play him this 15 seconds. Martian Manhunter movie, period piece from the 1940s. You could even do it as a crime noir. He is, and don't advertise it as that. Be like, call it something else like Detective Comics, and don't say who it is. Nobody's gonna know. They're just gonna be like, why is DC releasing a random detective? Oh my God, it's gonna be the Martian Manhunter. Of course, everyone will figure it out well beforehand, but that'll be the cool thing, like keep it a secret, and then they go in and it's the Martian Manhunter posing as a human one of his backstories at least, who is a detective that's afraid of fire. He's not afraid of it, I mean, it can actually hurt him, but I guess he is afraid of it, but because it can hurt him. That's my only pitch. Then, you know, like with the Wonder Woman, I guess they've kind of already done that with Wonder Woman, but it can add to a bigger universe. In Marvel, they keep talking like, it seems like in 2008, all of a sudden there's a billion superheroes. So they've alluded to that the Fantastic Four existed in the 60s. So there's going to be some either time travel or quantum realm stuff to bring them into the modern day without having aged, I assume. But I would like to think there was, you know, another era, and then Ant-Man was there could have been a prequel with the previous Ant-Man doing like covert missions.
Yeah, like the original with Hank Pym actually discovering the Pym particles for the first time.
I was waiting for that. I was hoping that was going to be the second Ant-Man movie. That was going to be, or it would at least be told in flashbacks so that it's half and half. So that you'd have half the movie would be a period piece, and it would have to make sense to what was, or maybe the key to what was going on at the present. I've loved Michael Douglas's portrayal of Hank Pym. So with that, I think they could do more with that to show there's superheroes of that time. The Blue Marvel, I think, would be a perfect one for the 60s especially. Just make it gritty and real. That would be one way Marvel could go really hardcore, is show the racial disparity that a superhero would have to deal with. That's like they did in Watchmen, where he would feel he had to keep every inch of his skin concealed to hide his ethnicity. And yeah, I'd bring in the writer of that Blue Marvel book and just adapt that first story completely. That would be perfect. I would like to see, you think Steve Rogers went back in time and got with his woman in the 50s and just stayed quiet for 50 years or 70 years or whatever. No, he was doing some nomad stuff. There couldn't be a Captain America out there when Captain America was frozen in ice. So he put on a mask and there's no way. That would be more uncharacteristic than me not eating guacamole now. If he just gave up doing the right thing with great power comes great responsibility. And so I would like to see that period piece and see what Captain America was up to during that time. I don't know if Chris Evans is ever going to come back, but that would be great. That would be a great film for James Gunn to direct and write. We are talking about James Gunn this week. I promise. That's been on my mind the whole time. We never got off track. That's right. It was just like, you're walking down a road and you see something cool on the side. You walk over to it and talk to somebody down a dark alley, and then you get scared and come back out. You can get back on track.
So yeah, we say it on track. It just crisscrosses.
Don't ever cross me.
Or the streams, unless you just want to, I guess.
Yeah. And if someone asks if you're a god, you say, yes! All right, with that, I think...
Yeah, with that, I think we'll end the episode. If you stayed with us this far, thank you. We hope you had fun on this roller coaster of madness.
There's the episode name.
Thank you. I was wondering what that was going to be. But yeah, thank you for joining us on this episode. If you like what we do, follow us on our various social medias. We're on Facebook and Instagram. If you really like what we do, consider supporting us on Patreon. And until next time, farewell.